Hey, this is Dr. Chris Goebbels here from Square One, and today I wanted to do a post because there's something that we've had going on a lot. It's a trend we've been seeing a lot with insurance companies, and this is something that I want to make people aware of. And particularly if you get a letter like the one I'm going to talk about, it really helps to explain why you really need to have good people on your team, as doctors, sometimes attorneys, people like that if you're in a car crash. And this is a letter we see a lot. It's a form letter. Insurance companies send it out to a lot of times to patients to kind of, I think to kind of intimidate them or make them decide not to get treatment. But basically, this is something that a claims representative sent one of our patients, and it says that based on our initial findings, it appears the damage sustained in this accident was a result of a low velocity impact, meaning going at lower speeds. We anticipate treatment has either concluded or will be ending shortly. Now, once we receive the medical specials, we'll consider the minimal nature of this traffic accident along with any other available information relating to this loss and injury when considering possible settlement. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to understand about this. The first thing is, just because you're not in a high-speed crash or just because there's not a lot of damage to the car does not mean there are not likelihoods of injuries. The reality is there are generally more injuries at lower speeds than there are at higher speeds, and there's particular reasons for that. One of the reasons are cars are not designed the same way they used to be. Cars at high speeds, they crumple, they absorb a lot of the energy. However, cars have been changed due to lobbying done by insurance companies to save them money, but cars are changed differently now, and so the way cars are manufactured, they are stiffer than they used to be. And at lower speeds, your car does not absorb as much impact. And so the reason this was designed, so say if you're rear-ended by someone going a lower speed, you don't have to replace a bumper and taillights and muffler and all that. But the problem is because the cars don't crumple at lower speed impacts like they do at higher speeds, especially we're talking about rear-end collisions, all that momentum gets transferred to different parts or the people inside the vehicle. So it's like if you have a soda can that's empty, you can crush it, but when it's solid, you can't compress it. So all the momentum gets transferred, and that relays to people in the injury. And a lot of times, you will not see all the damage to the car anyway until you actually pull off the bumper because of the way they're designed. So that's one thing right there. The amount of damage to a vehicle does not correlate to the potential injuries a person has, and how fast the impact happened does not necessarily mean there's not injuries, and lower speed impacts can have more severe injuries. Now, some other things you should be aware of. This insurance company's never talked to the patient. They've never seen any prior medical records. They know nothing about this patient. They've never done a physical exam. And so it's kind of a way to bully people around. And there's a lot of things that they have no idea. This particular patient is someone who's actually been in previous car crashes. And some people will say, well, maybe there's previous injuries. Well, what we know is if you had previous traumas or previous car crashes, you are more likely to be more severely injured in subsequent traumas. This person has other health concerns. She has degenerative scoliosis. Now, the crash didn't cause her scoliosis, but she was not having any problems with her scoliosis. She had no prior pain. She was dealing with no symptoms before the crash. And so because we wouldn't call that pre-existing. I mean, she has a lot of health problems that predisposed her. I mean, she's already weaker that predisposed her to having more severe things. Some other things we know is if you're a female, females are generally have a higher incidence of injuries, especially in rear-end collisions. If you have a low body mass, means you're thin, you're more petite, you're more likely to get hurt. If you have things like a tow hitch, right? If your seat did not actually, the seat backs can break where they collapse. If that didn't happen, you're more likely to get hurt because those collapse to absorb energy. If your head restraint was lower, the way you sit in the car, if you didn't know the impact was coming head on, if you were unaware of it, if your body was turned, there's all these other factors that really need to be looked at to get a bigger indicator of your chance of having a more severe injury or being injured. Just to name a few, I want to name a few that can really a few that stand out that are very popular that will show you, like, if these are things that we know increase the odds of having injuries. So I talked about being a female that weighs less than like 130 pounds, so smaller petite people more likely to get injured. History of prior traumas. If you've had prior traumas, the chances are your spine is not as strong. If your spine is not as strong, you're more likely to get new injuries. Your head restraint being low. Poor position, not seeing it coming. Someone that's tall, the head restraint is generally lower on their neck, so that positioning is a big thing. Where the vector came from. Rear impacts generally have more severe injuries than from the side or front. Not saying you can't have injuries, but rear impacts are generally the most severe. If you're out of position, you're hunched over, if you're slouched, you're out of position, things like that. If they're not positioning the car properly. Those are just a few. Now, those just tell us if you have those, you have increased odds of having an injury. In this letter, this insurance company knows nothing about any of this stuff, and yet they're making assumptions to say that it was a low speed, so you shouldn't be hurt. Other things we know, there's a bunch of other things that we know can increase your chance of having a long-term injury, which means there are a lot of things that can determine, based on some certain factors, your chances of recovering are not as great, and you have a greater chance of having things going on for a long time. And some of those are already mentioned, some are different. So your body mass, immediately onset of symptoms. If you immediately get symptoms, we know that your chances of having a long-term problem are increased. If you have ligament instability, which is only found during certain specific testing, see if they have a doctor that does that. Having initial back pain, having decreased range of motion, right? Upper back pain, pain in the extremities, numbness, tingling. We actually rate severities and injuries. So based on what we find in an exam, there are severity ratings for injuries. And these are in the national clearinghouses. One of the ones that's in Colorado that we use is Croft guidelines. And there's guidelines saying, based on the type of injury, this is how long it could take. This is how frequent you may need to see a chiropractor. Doesn't mean it has to, but there's guidelines within that. Insurance adjusters are notorious for telling patients, and even sometimes lawyers tell patients, that they should not need this kind of care when they have no idea what's been established in the guidelines that are in the national clearinghouses. So those are some big ones. Severity of initial pain. Using a seatbelt. If you had a seatbelt, you have a chance. Seatbelts, those things can cause injuries. Now they save lives too, but just that alone can cause certain injuries. Neck pain on palpation, muscle spasm, edema, blurred vision, difficulty sleeping. If you had a concussion, if you had post-concussion syndrome, things like that. Headaches. If someone already has degenerative problems or stenosis, they are more likely to have more severe injuries or more long-lasting. And degeneration of the spine does not necessarily mean you have pain. You could have problems in your spine, degeneration, things like that, and not have pain. But then after the crash, now you have pain. It's not that you're in pain because of degeneration. It's no, because the crash now caused the problem. So there's lots of different things. Older vehicles, sometimes, things like that. There's a lot of different things that can determine how long. And those are all things that have to be considered. The other thing is not just how fast the vehicles are going. There's like, was it icy? There's a bunch of different dynamics, the type of vehicle, when it was made. There's all of these things that have to be considered. And I hope you understand, it's like, how could you ever know this as a patient? Well, most doctors don't know this. Some attorneys don't know it. A lot don't know it. It's why you need to be really picky about who you're working with. One, you got to have doctors that can understand the injuries and know what to look for. They know how to detect it. They know how to write it down so it makes sense to an insurance adjuster. You have to have doctors that really know what they're doing, and they also know to give you the right kind of care. 30 to 50% of people that are in a car crash or in a cervical acceleration, deacceleration injury, 30 to 50% have chronic ongoing pain. You do not want to be one of those kinds of people. And then you got to have good attorneys that work with good doctors, so attorneys can help you do this. When you get stuff like this, a lot of our patients don't need attorneys. When you start getting things like that, that's when you need an attorney that can help make sure that you get the treatment you need and require, so you don't have an ongoing pain and problems. Another really cute thing that they put in here is they say this traffic accident. Well, my first thing is, it was not an accident. An accident would imply that there was a freak of nature, like lightning struck. It's not an accident. It wasn't an accident. What happened was their client was negligent or patient and caused their injuries. It wasn't an accident, it was a crash. They crashed into him. So, and the other thing is, I would call someone like this, and I may call them tomorrow, and I'm going to say, great, who's the medical doctor on your staff? If you're making these claims, I want to know who the medical provider is that's actually evaluating the patient and making these suggestions. Otherwise, to me, it's like practicing medicine without a license. If you were saying these are certain injuries and what should or should not be, it's like practicing medicine without a license, in my opinion. So, my name is Dr. Chris from Square One. I put this out because I'm writing a blog on it. I think it's important people know this stuff, and you have to understand all those things that go in. You have to work with really high quality people. Myself, my associate doctor, Dr. Justin, we are special trained in dealing with traumas and handling cases of people that are in motor vehicle collisions. So if you're out there, I hope you learned something from this. If you have questions, just post questions. And if you ever need help, or even just want us to talk to you about what's going on, just reach out to us, calling our office, or sending us a message. So Dr. Chris from Square One. This is the Square One Health Tip of the Day.